Welcome to Resist with Joy podcast, where we amplify the voices of everyday people and empower our listeners to engage, show up, and become the policy shapers of tomorrow. I'm Tina Marie.
And I'm Martina, and I want to dive right into the top of the mind news of the last week. Let's do it.
Well, you start. Because you brought up
Leave that in
Virginia
the pod.
Giuffre.
We didn't have a transition, but we're going to do it anyway. So I want to start out with Virginia Giuffre. Most people have heard her name, but maybe don't make the connection, or they heard about her as a victim of Epstein, but don't know that she actually died. Yesterday was her first year anniversary. And the Epstein files and everything that comes with it is really shaking the world. And we understand now that there's an Epstein class and the cover up from the Department of Justice and everything, all the really shenanigans going on in the background. But I thought we start out today with honoring Virginia Giuffre because thanks to her work, we continue to speak about it. And yesterday there was a great event in Washington, D.C. A lot of things happened yesterday in Washington, D.C., but one of the highlights, and we wanted to start out with that, is about Virginia Giuffre being honored, and that there are a lot of women that came forward. There's 1,000 Epstein survivors. And I just want to really say thank you, Virginia, for creating the path. And I'm really sorry for her family that they have to grieve so hard and continuously have to do the work at the same time. So thank you for that.
I agree. That was a beautiful speech, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's important to honor the pioneers that are brave enough to come forward to get the ball rolling, and that just one person can inspire so many others to come forward and share their tales. And then before you know it, we have a lot of public pressure to get rid of all of the, or at least make all of the evil people face punishment. So I appreciate her efforts.
Yes. Yeah, we have to get the malignant narcissists, all the narcissistic people, this whole class of like, only my way is the right way. They need to be pushed back to down in society. If you think of everybody in a society lives together, we don't want to be governed by people like that. We need to replace them. And that's the big job in November for us, to replace the lawmakers and then eventually also replace this president. But why don't we dive into that guy? And you tell the story, what happened yesterday, and I'm sure everybody has heard about it, but we have some thoughts about it.
There was an attempted assassination attempt at the White House Correspondents Dinner. I put that in quotation quotes because that's the narrative that's being pushed. And if we look at the facts, this is the first time that Trump ever actually went to the White House Correspondents Dinner as POTUS. So there's that. And it all ties back to his ballroom, in my opinion, because the judge ruled that Trump cannot build a ballroom for non-security reasons without congressional approval. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to the White House Correspondents' Dinner for the first time ever as a president. We also had Caroline Leavitt saying beforehand in a pre-interview, shots will be fired. Now, granted, that's just a figure of speech. I know that. She still said it, though. Worth pointing out. But then a gunman somehow shows up with a weapon, despite all the security that's there, for the president, and shoots off his weapon. And then he gets taken into custody. And if you look at the footage that came out, the vice president was ushered out before the president was. Mm-hmm. And even after the gunman was in custody, instead of like dispersing the event, doing investigations, closing everything off, a couple hours later, they just come right back to it. And Trump holds a press conference and says, see, this is why we need a ballroom, for security. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying it was a staged event, but
that ties into that we also still don't have any information about what happened last in 2024 in Butler, Pennsylvania. We never got any information about it. It's
None.
just like hiding the files again. What is the investigation? Someone actually died with that, during that assassination attempt, and that family is grieving. So the human cost was really high at the first time, or in Butler, Pennsylvania. And we are glad nothing happened yesterday. But I listened to Brian Tyler Cohen yesterday. He He was putting a really sober analysis shortly after, I think it was like 8 hours after the event or the shooting. And he said, this is not about a ballroom. It's about gun violence. This country always misses the mark of what the narrative is supposed to be. We need to get to, as a country, it's such a sad statement that out of a situation like this, the narrative is we need a ballroom. I guess all the kids in all the schools need a ballroom then too, because that's a safe place. But it's actually about the gun violence, the having access to guns so easily. And every state is different. We live in Hawaii. He has pretty strict gun laws and what you can do and not do. And I appreciate that very much. I come from a country, Germany. We don't have guns. You really only can be you have to be in a club and you have to have a license and everything. And it's not in our constitution. It's actually bonkers to have the Second Amendment the way it's, maybe not the way it's written, but the way the Supreme Court Justice Scalia interpreted it. It's just narrative shaping. That's really what's happening. It's a narrative shaping. And of course, the White House has the biggest microphone. And I listened to another podcast this week. The ability that Trump has is he's his own Goebbels. If people don't know who Goebbels was, he was the right hand of Hitler. And Goebbels said something very important back then. If you tell a lie enough times, a little bit will stick.
It becomes the truth.
It becomes the truth. So keep telling the lie. And in Hitler's case, he had a right-wing man, Goebbels, to do that work. But what we are facing is Trump is his own Goebbels. And I listened to Ruth Ben-Ghiat, another historian that I really recommend to follow. And she just said it's quite the skill that Trump has, being his own Goebbels. And of course, with the White House as a big machine to bring out a narrative, he's taking advantage of everything.
Plus, he has his own social media platform where he can make the rules.
Yeah.
So, and he goes off hours and hours, just tweet after tweet after tweet, spewing a bunch of garbage. It's insane, but it's also propaganda. This is what propaganda looks like.
Exactly. I recommend a movie that I watched this week. It was called Mr. Nobody Against Putin. It's on Prime, cost a couple bucks. But it was a young man who was living Russian, and he left Russia, he fled. And it was an Oscar-winning documentary about propaganda in schools when the Ukraine war started in 2022. I'm going to put it in the show notes so you can really get a feel of it, what it means to be propagandized. And this young man, he realized it, and he was in a good position to record all of the changes and how the society around him changed. And I know what propaganda is. I come from a country where I just have a different heritage, but to see then Russia today, how that all plays out, it's the narrative shaping, and that's why we do what we do. We're trying to be narrative shapers too, but for the truth and real information and humanity in the forefront. Okay, this ties into something I also wanted to repeat from last week. It's about the gaslighting and the narrative shaping. I guess I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I want to tell you about someone who is doing a lot of work his whole life. He has a PhD, probably psychology, in biology, psychobiology, I don't know all these names, but his name is Frank George, and he has a Substack, like we have a Substack. And his Substack is called The Gaslight Report, and I listened to it this week. While I learned over the years now what malignant narcissism is and how it shapes a personality, and it's actually a disorder. It's not, normal being is not a malignant narcissist. Society cannot function with malignant narcissists. But he explained to us what a malignant narcissist needs. It's adulation. Oh, I'm the greatest. Give it to me. And that's what you see in Trump, He had all the rallies and everything, the crowds. But now he's in the situation in his second presidency that first of all, the first stumble was the Epstein files that don't go away, and it turned people against him. I mean, lots of people are against that. We agree with a lot of other people in the MAGA sphere that this is just absolutely unconscious. But these are injuries that he gets, and this injury doesn't go away. But then he needs more adoration, so he makes some weird stunt, and then he goes into Venezuela, for example, right? And then he's like, more adoration. So he tries to, I guess, heal his injury, not being the great guy. And so if that cycle happens over and over again. So the third thing then was the big thing is Iran war. So more injury, and this doesn't go away, right? So he's a really injured, malignant narcissist. And that goes into then, it's called the rage, narcissistic rage. And that's what we're seeing.
We see it in his tweets. We see it in his social media posts.
Yes, yeah, it's rage. So we stay in this cycle, injury, rage, trying to heal. Guess last night, if you think of the White House Correspondent Dinner stunt, I guess I put it in quotes too, but we all have brains. We are not gaslit. It was another one. He's like, look at me again. 30 minutes later, I'm back at the podium in the White House. I'm the greatest.
I'm invincible.
That's right. So the end stadium of that whole cycle is called narcissistic collapse. And because we'll keep up the pressure, it will collapse. We just have to keep the pressure on. This is my message to the listeners. It's like, don't give up. It is difficult times, and it's a really, really bad human being in the White House, supposedly governing us.
And we can see that the MAGAverse is fracturing right now.
Yes.
A lot of his major supporting talking heads have been coming out against him slowly but surely. We have Candace Owens that's talked out against him, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Alex Jones, other people. Yeah.
Carlson.
Tucker Carlson is another one. Megyn Kelly, Ann Coulter, like all of them have been coming out one by one, just saying, "Oh, this is bad. What he's doing is bad. What this and that." So the MAGAverse is definitely fracturing, and the more that we keep up the pressure, the more that we keep showing up at protests, the more it's going to fracture. And I think they know that their time is up coming in November. I heavily feel like we're going to take back like the House and Senate, and we probably will take back the presidency in 28 as well. And he knows that his time is up. Like this is his last hurrah, essentially. And he's going to be a lame duck president for the next 2 years. If we don't impeach him, but we're going to probably impeach him.
I think the resistance is really strong. We are getting more and more organized. We have a podcast now too, right? So we are all in the independent media, and more voices are out there for a better world, literally a better world. And that's what I'm all for. That motivates me so deeply. We talked briefly beforehand, what people do for their hobbies and maybe do sports or knitting or what is. For me, I guess my hobby right now is fighting the authoritarian breakthrough. And I put all my skills and what I learned over the years as a small business owner into this fight. And I'm sure that our listeners do the same thing, everybody with their own talents. And we're all we're on the right side of history, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which leads us into our next topic. We have to fight the good fight, because if we keep letting idiots run the country, we're going to be into a war that we don't need to be in, and more importantly, a nuclear war. There has been an unconfirmed report mentioned by retired CIA analyst Larry Johnson. He went on a podcast called Judging Freedom. He essentially indicated that Trump attempted to access the nuclear codes during an emergency White House meeting, and in a moment, though, he got stopped by a military official. And that military official is identified as General Dan Kane, and he allegedly intervened and said no. So the accusation is there that Trump attempted to launch the nuclear bomb, and the military stepped in and said no. That in itself gives me a little bit of comfort that we still have, a sane person that would be handling the actual physicality of launching that bomb. But at the same time, just the fact that this is a possibility that he could do, it's very unnerving, to say the least. And we need to prevent anyone that's insane from being president ever again, because when you have a malignant narcissist who is injured all the time and who is experiencing the narcissistic rage, that's the end goal for them, is to launch a nuclear bomb.
Yeah. And adding to that, Dr. Frank George talked also about the frontal lobe dementia that ties into it. I mean, a combination, we really have the perfect storm. And it's so hard to talk about it in the sense of like, my head always goes back to like, we told you about it. We said it before the election. But we have to do the work. Maybe America has to be so injured or has to live through these times, because Germany had to live through these times too. A different generation comes out of it. Different people come out of it. And we will never forget what happened to us. And we need to teach that to the next generation. And all these young people, my employee, she's 28. I told her yesterday too, it's like, you're young, you live through these times, but there are better times ahead because you learn it early in your life. What is important? Narrative shaping, media, what you consume, and how your brain is either gaslit or not. And yeah, she's highly involved too. And she's our editor, by the way. Hi, Savannah. Definitely a team effort here.
There was one more piece of news that I wanted to highlight. Diving right into the last topic of the day, there was a pilot that went down in Iran, and there was an operation to retrieve that pilot. And apparently their Situation Room had kept Donald Trump out of the loop in the rescue mission, which says a lot. He was incredibly angry that this even happened, that a pilot went down. But aides kept the president out of the room as they got minute-by-minute updates because they believed his impatience wouldn't be helpful in the operation. And this is a news article where you can find it. Trump kept out of the room during operation to find downed pilots in Iran after screaming at aides for hours, report says. So that's another thing that we have going for us is we have sane aides in the White House that realize that his interference and him being informed too much is more dangerous than if we just bypass him altogether. So, I mean, they're doing the right thing given the situation and given his temperament. But at the same time, it's like that would be a disaster if that happened to any other president.
Yeah.
But they are doing the right thing in this instance because his temperament is going to cause more chaos, and they see that and they're acting accordingly, which I want to give them high praise and thanks for.
Yeah. I just thought about when you use the word tempered, right? You need even tempered leadership.
Yes.
Not someone that blows off and is impatient or
unpredictable,
chaotic. That's what we have now. And I mean, if you drill down to your own job, you don't like a boss who's not tempered. You feel like it's an unfair treatment of you, and this is now all exaggerated in the White House, Now, shall we end on a high note like we always try to do with resist with joy?
Well, I had a bit of revelation from talking with a friend. She lives in a rural area, and she doesn't have a lot of like-minded people around her. One of the things that she said, because I do have a group where we kind of commiserate and whatnot, for people that don't have other people around them. She mentioned that it does feel nice to talk with other people, even if it is online. But she reminded me of a quote that Dan Savage had made at one point. And this is kind of the reason why we do our podcast. And the quote goes, "During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night. And it was the dance that kept us in the fight because it was the dance we were fighting for." And to put that into our perspective, it's the joy that we're fighting for. We cannot live in constant chaos because it is going to run us down, our emotions. And finding those little pockets of joy is going to be what keeps us going and pulls us into the other side. And the joy is what we're fighting for.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And then we want to tie this into where you can feel some joy physically. There will be more protests coming up this May 1st. And it is a different protest than what was, for example, the No Kings protests, but it's the same organizers, Indivisible, nationwide, putting it out to participate. And so I want to read back real quick what the Indivisible National is actually doing. They're planning a national coalition economic boycott and a general strike next Friday, which is May 1st. And it's called also May Day, and in Hawaii we call it Lay Day. So it's quite a cool combination. And the national call is for no school, no work, no shopping day to disrupt the violent billionaire takeover of our country, prioritize working families. And the action is modeled on a successful economic blackout day in Minneapolis in January. And it's getting attention. A large national law firm actually published guidance to their offices on how to address their staff walking out. Now, we are not saying do all of it, no school, no work, no shopping. That's the best case scenario. So if you have that ability, do it. But if you can't, that's okay too. Here in Kona Indivisible will have a protest from 4 to 5 p.m. where you can come to the usual place. It's on Queen Kahumanu Highway, south of Henry Street and the Mormon Temple. So we would love to have you there. We will make a link in the show notes. If you want to sign up, look it up. Look at my first action that you can take. And of course, when you're here, if you're in Kona, we will see each other in real life, and we hope to see you there in real life too. And then we can chat a little bit more about the efforts we have to take.
And I want to emphasize that we recognize that not everybody is in the same position to be able to protest in the same way. You know, I get it. Like if you're working 3 jobs trying to make rent, you may not be able to skip work because that's going to be a missed paycheck for you. There are other things that you can do in your habits, for instance. We live in a very highly consumerism environment where you see something that's like $5 here, $10 there, $20 here. And in the moment, it's like no big deal. It's just $5, whatever. But if you calculate how much you spend on things that you don't actually need over the course of the month, it could average out to $300, $400, $500. Now, I'm not saying that's the same in everybody's circumstance, but it was the same in my experience several years ago. I think maybe during Trump's first term, I realized this about myself. And I started to do this thing where I changed my habits in terms of spending. Instead of putting things in my shopping cart and purchasing it and waiting for it to arrive, I ended up putting things in my shopping cart and waiting a day. And if I still wanted the item after a day, then I bought it. After about a week or 2 of that, I changed it to 3 days, and then to 5 days, and then to 2 weeks, and then to a month. And I can tell you that the longer you wait after you put something in your shopping cart and then revisit it, you'll learn that you don't actually want it anymore. Like that feeling of just putting it in your cart but not actually purchasing it will satisfy whatever need we have to purchase things. And then I started getting more intentional with my shopping. I started shopping more local. And if there was like a local, farmer's market over a grocery store, I would try that instead. It's just little habits here and there that gain momentum over time, where it not only saves on your pocketbook, but it also helps smaller businesses earn more money. And it takes away money from all of the satanic pedophiles that are running our entire planet. So if you can do just small habits like that on a daily basis, it's going to help in the long term. And it's going to take down all of the billionaire idiots that are basically exploiting us and putting us into modern day equivalent of, mindless bogs.
Yep. Yeah, I'm glad you actually experienced it yourself to change your habits. I love that. How you shared that, So, yeah, I didn't have to change. I come from a household. My mom had to look for every penny. She, at the end of the month, always. And so I never got to the point where I'm like, I really want something. I'm going to buy it now. I always had a little bit of a buffer. And I have this mindset of, do I really need it? It's a really question on myself all the time. Do I really need it? But of course, if you're a little older and you have a little bit of excess money, right? There's some spending money there. I still have that same thought, So I think it's great to ask the question, and I'm really glad you shared how you changed your habits. It's all possible. It's not, we can change as humans. It's possible.
And now I don't feel like the need to buy it. Like when I go to a store, I'm like, I don't want it. I don't, I look at something, I'm like, oh, cool. I pick it up in my hand, I feel it, and then I put it back on the shelf. It's like, it's just going to take up more space in my house.
Yeah.
And I don't feel a need where I have to take it. You know what I mean? So it's you can change your habits. It's just a matter of being conscious about it and making the effort.
All right. Well, there was another top of the mind news of the week. Love these 30-minute talks with you on Sundays. We will try to publish on Wednesdays, and we're just getting started. You will also we will also have interviews, building up our archive with really
Our
interesting
guest
people.
list. We got some great guests coming on.
Yes. It's all our neighbors, people that work in the resistance and have so much knowledge that we want to share with everybody. So looking forward to releasing those interviews and first recording them, Savannah editing them, and then releasing them. So,
but in the meantime, click all the buttons, like, share, subscribe, comment, and then, yes. you can get our information as we put it out.
That's right. All right. That's a wrap. We're going to say aloha from Hawaii.
Aloha.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.